Hello friends, and welcome to the video. So we're going to talk about doership today. If you're the doer. Not really if you're the doer, you're not the doer. But so in some videos recently I've been discussing this with people. So we had the video about grace, and a few people commented saying that they felt grace, basically this external help, was everything. That one person said when they let go of trying to control things, the universe took over and grace took over. And another person said that they trusted, they found that when they started trusting in the universe, things got better. So now, this is a big teaching in a lot of Advaita Vedanta, especially Neo-Advaita. So this Advaita that's not really, it's more direct path, not really based on the, doesn't talk a lot about the Upanishads or Shankaracharya. And sometimes it's simplified in a Western way. And the message is of no doership. So people like Liquorman and Ramesh Balsekar, their main teaching is that there is no doer. And you just have to, when you realize that, you realize that you're the observer and everything's just happening. And Ramesh Balsekar says it's all God's will, but also the universe's will, or he'll even calls it the source sometimes. So this idea that you're not the doer. Now, it's kind of essential to get rid of the doer. We talk a lot about eliminating the ego, but we're not really going to have to eliminate the ego. The ego is the I maker, and it tells you that you did things. So the ego is what gives you this impression that you've done things. So when something happens, the ego steps in and said, I did it. And the idea is that we've got to transcend this, because this is building the separate self. So some people call the ego the separate self, but I prefer to say that the separate self, the sense of I, that not the real self, well, we've got different aspects. We've got the reflected consciousness, and we've got the I thought, and then we've got the ego, the ahamkara, which kind of it does all the work of claiming thoughts as mine and claiming actions as mine. And then it builds this thing that you feel that you are, this separate identity built out of thought. Now, really, there's just one undivided reality, and that's what you are. So to get rid of the attachment to the separate self and all the suffering that it brings of being limited and vulnerable and finite, you have to see beyond this. You have to transcend this. So getting rid of the ego, or transcending the ego, getting rid of the sense of the doer is a good way. You get rid of the doer, and immediately you're just the observer. You're the witness of everything happening. Now, if you look from a point of view of psychology, there have been decades of studies saying that this is bad. Not really enlightenment's bad, but and religion's certainly good according to psychology. People seem to live better. It's the idea that if you don't feel you're in control, it causes depression, hopelessness. If you have an external locus of control, so if you have an internal locus of control, you feel that you can make a difference. If you don't, if you have an external locus of control, then you feel everything's out of your hands and you feel helpless. And there is actually something called learned helplessness, which can develop. So they've done tests on animals where they put these animals in awful conditions, and they train them to develop this learned helplessness. I don't even like talking about it, just thinking about poor animals. But then, once they're trained with this learned helplessness, they actually give them an opportunity to escape, and they don't escape. They don't make the effort to escape because they've had this drummed into them that they're helpless. There's also other things connected to this, real problems, psychological pathologies like schizophrenia, where people, their locus of control, they think somebody else or something else is controlling them. Something else may be putting thoughts in their heads or telling them to do stuff or making them do stuff. And then we've got depersonalization, where people don't feel that they're actually doing. They know intellectually that they're doing everything, but they don't feel attached to it. They don't really feel like they're the actor, the agent. And it's a horrible feeling, and they want to get back to feeling normal again. So imagine if in this idea of enlightenment, which is more like a psychedelic trip than enlightenment, I think, you get this point where you don't feel like, you don't feel attached anymore. And you're just terrified and you want to get back. I just want things to go back to normal. Why did I do this to myself? A few people have even commented that after listening to Angelo DeLullo, they developed this, and one guy had to go and speak to a specialist. What's her name? Willoughby Britton, or is that a TV presenter? About this, because he developed, from listening to Angelo DeLullo, depersonalization and derealization, and it wasn't good. So we've got all that. Now, really, should we be messing around with this? There is the flip side, though. So, as has been proven also scientifically, there is this paradox of choice. So, too much choice, and it makes us unhappy. We feel stressed, we feel pressure, and they did an experiment where a group of people had to pick lots of there was a big selection of jam. I don't know how many, a few hundred, and they had to pick some jam, and they couldn't. They were blocked by the number of options. And if they did pick a jar of jam, they actually felt regret afterwards. They didn't feel really satisfied because of the other options that were there. And the other group were given only a small number of jam jars. Jam jar sounds like it's empty, jars of jam. And they were they were happier with their choice afterwards. So all this choice, especially in the modern world, it makes us unhappy too. So there must be some in-between way. Now, we can look at this idea of, this comes in religion, that do what you can. Do what you can today. So in the Gospel, in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said, don't worry about tomorrow. Today has enough worries to deal with. So yeah, leave it for, don't, just act now, and the other things, you can deal with them then. There's also, in Islam, there's a story where somebody asked the Prophet, should I tie up my camel? If I pray to God, then won't he just look after my camel? I don't need to tie it up. And the Prophet said, tie up your camel and trust in God. So you do your duty and you trust in God. We've also got the serenity prayer, Lord, give me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, and the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So there is this in these religions about having to act, and yet kind of leaving it to God. My mum always used to say, when I was little, put in God's hands, and it does take a bit of the stress off you, the burden off you. Now, one of the interesting things that in the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna says is that the wise man, or I'm going to paraphrase, he sees, or she sees, action in inaction, and inaction in action. That is the sage. The sage is like this, and they see all actions as being done by them. Now, this, we can first, if we look at Advaita Vedanta, let's look at in what way you are not acting. Brahman is unchanging, so it can't act. Now, but is that me? Is that in Advaita Vedanta, the big claim is that you can test everything with your own experience. So if we do Drigdrisha Viveka, this discernment between the seer and the seen, this investigation, you look at your hand and you say, well, I'm looking at my hand, the hand's not looking at me. So I am the subject, my hand is the object. Then you think of your eyes, you move your eyes, so I move my eyes. So the eyes are the object and my mind is the subject. And then you think of your thoughts, and your thoughts are there, you're thinking of them. So the thoughts are the object and you're the subject. And you go back like that until you feel that you are the witness. Now, the witness doesn't change. I mean, we say Brahman doesn't change because God is immutable. And, well, it's even beyond God, it's the ground of being. Unchanging. Any change is Maya. It's all in the illusory world. So the movement that all this change is not us. If we could see that we changed, the witness changed, that would be an object. So that wouldn't be the witness. And if the witness changed without us knowing, actually, there is no subjective experience of change. So there is no change. In the subject, there is no change. So in this way, you are unchanging and therefore not doing anything. The reason why Krishna puts it this way is, if you see, the wise man sees action in inaction. So if you think of something like, fasting. So you're not eating. It's actually something you're not doing, but it's actually harder to do than eating. So if you fast, it's action in inaction. So there's action in everything. And when people like, certain Neo-Advaita teachers say there's nothing to do, there's nothing new, and you can't search, you can't do that, you can't sit and abide in awareness. It's even that is action. So whether you do something or you don't do something, it's all action. And then the other side is that the wise man also sees, or the sage sees action. It sees inaction. So, and this is the fact that you are there and all this stuff is going on, and you're in the relative world, you're doing a lot of stuff, and yet you understand that there is nothing going on. In yoga, in Patanjali yoga, the idea to get enlightened is to still the mind. So you still the mind. If you can't still the mind, then you do practice breathing. If you can't practice breathing because you're uncomfortable, then you practice asanas. If you can't sit in Padmasana, locus pose, lotus pose, not the locus pose, then you do all the other, 100 and something postures so that you can eventually sit properly in Padmasana. Now, and then your mind stills, and when it's still, like a lake, it becomes very evident, the witness. So the witness really separates, and you realize that you're the witness. Now, in Advaita Vedanta, however, the idea is that you understand, through knowledge, you understand that when everything is happening, nothing is really happening. It's like watching a film. You're the screen. The screen's not moving. The screen's not doing anything. All the action is in the film. It seems like there's all this action going on. But if you touch the screen, it's completely still. So all this movement is not really going on. It's you are always still and not doing. You're not the doer. This gets you free of karma. That's one of the benefits, because if you're not in the adding more things in the, doing actions which give you karma, good actions, good karma, bad actions, bad karma, and then you get, suffering, or you get nice things happening to you, you're free of that because you are not the doer. And it's the only way that anybody can be free of that, is to understand that they're Brahman. And in the world, we see all this action, and we can participate while understanding that we are completely at peace. In fact, Swami Vivekananda said in one of his lectures in London that the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna goes and tells Arjuna to fight the war, and he doesn't want to fight the war, and he says, you have to fight the war, but don't hold on to the result of your actions because it's influenced by everything, but you have to do your duty. This is the teaching, Swami Vivekananda says, that of intense activity in the middle of eternal peace. So you have this eternal peace while everything's going on, because you're the ground. You're the observer that we just found in Drigdrishya Viveka. When we step back, you're that immutable, the unchangeable thing which is observing. You are not acting, and yet you can be in intense action. You can, and the last thing that, the last line of the quote was that, and you understand that you do everything. Now, that, according to Swami Sarvapriyananda, this doesn't mean that that you do, because everything's happening in you, that you are doing everything. Because at the end of the day, the real technical line is that there is no change. It's an illusion. It's Maya. It's the snake on being mistaken for a rope. There is no change in anything. And so we can't say that. It was in the talk that is in the archives of the Vedanta New York Society. It's actually Rick Archer from Buddha at the Gas Pump who mentions this, who asks him. And Swami Sarvapriyananda had to say that, no, it's not actually that. What it is that every time we do anything in the world, it's to achieve a goal. And in Advaita Vedanta and other spiritual paths, this is the ultimate goal. Enlightenment, moksha, there's other words, nirvana, salvation, lots. That is the ultimate goal. And everything is done to that end. It's mistaken to be being done for other things, but you do everything. And that really means that you do everything to achieve this goal. You have done everything because you have achieved enlightenment. You've done what's necessary in this life. And that's how it should be understood according to him. Although, yes, it's tempting if somebody like myself were to read that, it would be, oh yes, that's because everything's happening in Brahman, but apparently not. So there we go. So you can have your cake and eat it, apparently, in Advaita Vedanta anyway, not in Patanjali Yoga, where you have to still the mind, have samadhi, and then you realize that you're the witness. No. Through knowledge, through self-inquiry, you realize you're the witness, even through the day, keeping your eyes open. What's the point? Sri Ramakrishna said, what's the point in seeing God if you only see him when you close your eyes? What kind of God is that? You should be able to see him with the eyes open as well. So I hope that was interesting. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.